Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a detail on this 2014 black Porsche Boxster.
Waking up under all this rust, it's raining in my room. The water falls in pools until I'm getting carried away, riding on the back of the wave. So I let go, come what may. But all this time I'm hoping for a sunny day.
It's been a minute since my last detailing vlog. A lot's been happening, including some upgrades to the wash bay and construction of an all-new detailing room, which you'll see for the first time in this video. It's not 100% complete, but enough to start doing some jobs and teaching some detailing classes while the finishing touches continue. Now this Porsche, or Porsche Boxster, belongs to a very nice gentleman who's had it for a while, but is actually his first time ever having a car professionally detailed. So it was my job, a few months back now, to talk him through the various options, costs, and realistic outcomes he could expect coming to me to undergo this process. Now, as you may already be able to see, but will surely see as this detail progresses, the paint and trims on this car have seen better days. In other words, there's certainly great room for improvement in the way of deep cleaning, removing defects, restoring gloss, and adding some great protection in place. I'll cover more about what the owner chose to have done in terms of both services and to what level shortly, but for now, I hope you guys enjoy this video and let's get to it.
Help to come, but maybe I could swim and start to dry my skin until I'm getting
Now, I'll do my best to talk you through each process in this video and list the products used in the description box, but as I always mention, you don't need to use or do exactly as I do, just find what works best for you. The first step was giving the wheels a great clean. Now as you have a look at the process, which basically started with a chemical pre-treatment dwell and rinse to safely remove the first layer of grime, and then a physical clean using a variety of brushes, I'll try and lay out this job in terms of what the client opted to have done. Now there's lots of options when detailing any vehicle, a light paint enhancement versus more in-depth paint correction, engine bay and interior detailing options, wheels on versus wheels off cleaning, headlight restoration, trim rejuvenation, a soft top protective coating, and waxing or sealing versus ceramic coating the finish. There's also lots of factors to consider, like the current condition of the car, existing paint thickness, how the car will be used, a daily, weekender or show car, and the experience or skill level of the detailer. But what it essentially comes down to in many cases is cost and budget. I know we're still navigating this social media era where everything is just miraculously achieved in a short video with no other considerations. But in the real world, time is money and most people have budgets to work with. For this particular job, the owner opted for a full exterior decontamination cleanse, including a wheels on clean, a lighter paint enhancement polish, a glass polish, and ceramic coating of all the paint, wheel faces, glass, and plastic trims. So although there was certainly the ability to address more areas and undergo high levels of correction, I personally think that as a first-time consumer of these detailing services, this was a great place to start finding a good balance of great results versus budget. So my hope with this video is to show you that although we're not striving for perfection here, it will still be such an amazing improvement and will still take a lot of time, cost and labour to get there. Next up was the exterior cleanse, starting with an alkaline snow foam pre-treatment.
Sunrise in my eyes, just like a new day, a breath of fresh air in my life.
Before we start to get physical in manually washing the car, it's a great idea to rinse the vehicle down to remove the looser dirt, as to avoid pushing it around the paint and trims, causing unwanted swirls. Using a stronger but still safe alkaline leaning detergent and allowing it to dwell for 5 to 10 minutes will help to soften, degrease and remove more grime in the following pressure rinsing down stage. In a nutshell, it's like soaking your dishes in soapy water prior to cleaning. It's also important to point out that there's a significant benefit in using good technique in this initial pressure rinsing stage. Don't just erratically wave the water about and quickly flush the car down. Keep the water beam close to the surface, move slowly, be methodical in covering every area, and blast into all the crevices and intricate areas. If you do it correctly, it should take a good 10 minutes plus, and you will achieve a far better and safer cleaning result.
I played the dice right and let the good times roll. One me and one me, forever it's our show.
Now, although the owner didn't choose to coat the soft top, I still gave it a great thorough clean. I just refoamed it and then using a brush gave it a good scrub down. I do find that with most fabrics, a slightly stiff brush has far better cleaning properties than a wash mitt to get into all the fibres and remove more embedded particles for a superior cleaning result. Next up was the physical hand wash. Whereas I find an alkaline detergent works best to initially loosen and degrease the surface, I've found that following up with a mild acidic detergent has a great complementary cleaning ability to not only continue cutting through the general traffic grime, but also help in breaking down mineral and environmental fallout particles to a higher degree. Now there's lots of methods you can use to safely and effectively wash a vehicle. Multi-bucket, multi-wash mitt, multi-rinsing methods, and it goes on and on. I think the internet has just made this a needless area of contention amongst the detailing community. My advice is don't focus too much on what method you use, rather than executing it to a high level. You can use any method you like, but if you do it poorly, the method itself won't save you. In other words, it's less about what you do and more about how well you do it. Personally, I love the fact that in this day and age, we get to see people from around the world show us different ways of doing things. It's an amazing gift we're blessed with, sometimes educational, interesting and helpful, but yes, sometimes also controversial, mind-numbing and ridiculous or just hilarious. So it doesn't mean I agree with everything I see, but no one's forcing me to watch, and I would so rather have and encourage content that I both agree and disagree with rather than trying to shut it down. All I'm saying is a little more humility and appreciation of all the hard work that goes into making content, and a little less self-righteous and superior complex could go a long way in encouraging all this free content we benefit so greatly from. In some of the more intricate areas like the plastic trim surrounds, molds and door handles, where a large mitt is difficult to clean effectively, I used a smaller detailing brush with an all-purpose cleaner to agitate, loosen and then rinse the trap grime off. I think the most satisfying part of this whole job was cleaning the exhaust tips. I used a metal polishing soap with water and a lot of elbow grease to get the previously muddy carbon-infused tips back to a beautiful shiny metal finish. After the basic deep cleanse wash, I could still both feel and see a nice amount of bonded fallout particles on the paint and trims that would have to be removed prior to polishing the paint. I used an iron removal clay lubricant with a synthetic clay towel that worked extremely effectively to safely dissolve and dislodge the particles from the surface. The whole goal of a deep contamination cleaning process is to get the paint and trims as perfectly clean and bare as possible for the following paint correction and or protection stages. A good way to assess this is that the surface of the car should slowly pull water, feel smooth, but also with some grip or tackiness to it. That's how clean and bare paint should look and feel. Once this was achieved, the car was dried using both towel and compressed air before moving it into the new detailing room. Before I get to actually polishing a car, there's always a few pre-correction steps I like to do, starting with an IPA wipe down. This isopropyl alcohol clean is all about removing any lingering detergent or chemical residue from the previous decontamination stage, any kicked up dirt or dust after the drying stage, and the alcohol also helps dry any remaining moisture, which helps during the masking stage. I then like to measure the paint's thickness. This is all about making sure I have enough clear coat depth to safely correct the paint and to identify any repairs or resprays I need to be aware of. Now, as you can see, I was getting some very high readings from 300 to 600 microns on the car's bonnet, whereas the rest of the car was averaging closer to 120 microns, which is what I'd expect from original factory paint. That's a clear sign that the bonnet has been repainted. As I've mentioned many times in the past, high readings like that usually means that there's less actual clear coat thickness as you're measuring both the original car paint and the respray, or sometimes even multiple resprays, giving you false inflated readings. As the top layer of clear coat is what we're really interested in as detailers, a good way to estimate that is to measure the door jambs that typically have around 20 microns or just a single thin layer of clear coat. So with the door jambs measuring about 80 microns, I can minus 20 microns and predict that anything above 60 microns is all clear coat, which for original paint is good and nothing to be concerned about. With the paint and trims clean and bare, this is always the best time to truly evaluate the paint's condition. Now, there's no denying that this paint is very weathered with a strong uniform layer of swirls. But beneath the light swirls are also lots of moderate scratches and definitely a few deeper rids and chips that will become more obvious once the lighter swirls are removed. Apart from that, there's some decent oxidation and haze that's given this black paint more of a charcoal finish and certainly a few mineral etchings here and there. The good news is that the room for improvement is massive, and I was really excited to help restore this paint. I was actually debating whether to keep the roof up or down during masking, but after assessing it both up and down, it became clear that the less problematic option was keeping the top closed. So onto the polishing stage, starting with a few test sections to see what the paint is like and what it prefers. I've detailed many Porsches in the past. They're typically, but not always, soft paints, and the panels are mostly tight curves and crevices, so my choice of large polisher was a smaller 5-inch 9mm throw dual action polisher which has fantastic rotation. I also started with a soft finishing foam pad and a fine car polish that tends to finish well on more sensitive paints. I used a mid machine speed, moderate pressure, a moderate arm speed, and did 3 row passes. Now, as I mentioned before, my client opted for a light single stage enhancement polish as opposed to more in-depth paint correction. So my goal here was to find a combination that finishes as well as possible, because gloss and clarity is the primary goal of a paint enhancement polish, but at the same time I also want to remove as many of the light to moderate defects as I possibly can in a single stage. Now, looking at the results, the first test is already such a big improvement. The gloss is bang on, near perfect, the oxidation and haze is all but gone, and it's at least a 60% plus removal of the existing swirls, scratches and etchings, which also very clearly indicates that although this panel has been repainted, this is still quite a soft paint. So this could certainly be an option that fits or is appropriate for a paint enhancing stage, but to be honest, I'd still like to see if I could get a higher defect removal rate while still finishing near perfect. For a second test, I stuck with the same polish as I already know it's going to finish great on this paint, but switched to a slightly stiffer foam polishing pad and also moved to a mid to high machine speed, added just a touch more pressure, slowed down my arm speed a little, and did an extra 4th row pass in my set. In a nutshell, these are just little tweaks to help create a bit more cut, as my main goal now is to see if I can improve the defect removal rate. Having a look at the results, this was just an overall superior outcome to the previous set. The gloss and clarity is even better and richer, which I think is due to removing the last of the oxidation and haze, and the defect removal has jumped to at least 70 to 80%. This also tends to indicate that although this paint is without a doubt soft, it doesn't seem to be horribly soft and sensitive, as it can actually take a touch more aggression and still finish very well. Now, as I just mentioned, my goal is to remove as many defects as possible without compromising the finish in a single stage. So now, knowing that this polishing foam pad can finish beautifully on this paint, I decided to try it with a slightly more aggressive medium compound, and my method and technique were identical to the previous section. Having a look at the results, this is easily the best defect removal so far, moving into that 80 to 90% range, which is just crazy considering how relatively gentle this combination still is. However, once we start to assess the finish, it's a different story, as we now have a slightly milky or hazy finish, meaning this compound isn't finishing well enough to my liking. You may also now, with most of the light to medium defects removed, be able to see some fine pitting marks in the finish. I've mentioned these many times in past videos that they are always most prominent on red and black paints and almost exclusively on horizontal panels. This pitting can be removed quite successfully, but in most cases, it will require a heavy cutting or leveling of the paint to do so, which certainly isn't something I'm pursuing on this job. For a fourth test section, I switched to a finer primer polish and used it with the same pad and general technique. For those of you that aren't familiar with primer polishes, they correct paint similar to a standard car polish, but additionally leave resins behind that can fill in minor defects, and you can also ceramic coat directly over them, which will seal the results for many years. Now, I'm glad I tried this additional test section, as overall, the finish is more or less just as good as the second test section, but with the added filling ability, this section has resulted in a better defect eliminating outcome. It's not quite as good as the third or previous test section I did, but I'd say it's at that 75 to 80% defect removal rate here, but the gloss and clarity is just fantastic. So to me, this will be the best possible overall cut and finish in a single stage that more than delivers what I promised to my client. Now, with all that sorted out, it was then time to see if this same combination would also work well on the original factory paint. Now, this isn't always the case, but my results doing a few test sections with this combination around the car seem to work even better, with even a touch better defect removal or elimination. Now, that's most likely because the bonnet was one of the worst areas of the car, but I also think it's largely due to this original paint versus the respray paint and just what they like to work with. But overall, I was happy with the combination across the whole car, and it was now time to get down to work. Now, as I touched on before, Porsches do have lots of dramatic panels and shapes, which, if you wish to achieve both a safer and higher end result, does require the use of smaller 3, 2 and 1 inch pads and machines. Trying to shove large pads and backing plates into small areas or run them over more vulnerable panel edges and body lines typically results in higher risk work and lower quality results. More appropriate sized pads and machines produce better results and less unwanted clear removal in those sensitive areas. The only drawback is that it is far more time consuming, and you obviously have to invest in the equipment. This is essentially what makes many performance cars more time consuming to polish. So throughout this correction stage, you'll see me using my larger polisher maybe a third of the time, and the rest of the time is all mini and macro work. This brings up another point that I'm sure many of you who are in the industry are well aware of, but many consumers may not be, which is that you can't compare apples to apples when selecting the same service from one detailer or business to the next. 10 years ago, my typical single stage polish would have taken 3 to 4 hours, and I certainly didn't use all the different machines or take as much time as I do now to tune in the very best combination, and I also didn't have the same environment, lighting, and as much experience as I do today. These days, my typical single stage polish takes 10 to 15 hours. More involved multi-stage corrections are usually 30 hours plus. All I'm trying to point out is that a single stage polish, just like a ceramic coating package and so on, aren't uniform services that can be compared by just looking at the price and thinking you're gonna get the same result. Essentially, you get what you pay for.
All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world.
Another tear just burst from the side of your eye.
Now I did set up a number of 50-50 shots throughout this video using good defect spotting lights to try and clearly show you on camera the before and after results. My hope is that it will show you that although the results certainly weren't near perfect, I mean that's not what a paint enhancement process is about, at least not on a car with this level of defects. The results were such a massive improvement with high levels of gloss and saturation, as well as very consistent correction from edge to edge of each panel. And that's really where most of the time goes, in being consistent, safe and uniform.
All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world.
One big advantage of performing a very light paint enhancement compared to more involved paint correction, besides the time and cost factors, is that so little clear coat is being removed. It's virtually impossible to put a precise measurement on how much paint is being removed because car paint is simply very inconsistent, as you would have seen when I was measuring it. But if I had to guess, I would be surprised if I was removing even a micron of paint during this process, which is basically so little it's immeasurable. Whereas a more aggressive multi-stage correction could typically remove several microns of paint. You can always cut or level more paint in the future, but you can never add it back on, not without repainting a panel. And when it's original paint, that's only a one-time thing.
All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world.
One of the biggest changes in detailing, or really car philosophy in general, I've had is that I've come to really appreciate, cherish and try to preserve originality. As a young guy, all I could think about was modifying cars. Aftermarket wheels, suspensions, exhaust, spoilers, stereos and so on. I would also correct the paint sometimes to an inch of its life because it just had to be perfect. These days when I buy an older car, the first thing I do is try and find the original parts and restore it back to how it originally was. And if it still has factory paint, I would so rather live with a few defects and preserve that paint rather than shaving it back to chase all the imperfections. Now look, that doesn't mean I still don't do my very best to correct and restore the car paint to a high level. In fact, quite the opposite. I spend more time and far more care than I ever have in my career. It just means I'm a lot more cautious about preserving original car paint and finding that defect removal balance, because I do find OEM paint to be such a beautiful thing. And yes, as a detailer who spends about 80% of his time doing paint correction, I can tell you without a doubt that 99 times out of 100, original OEM paint is always superior to aftermarket paint. It's easier to work on, it's far more uniform, clear and consistent, not to mention more resilient. Even working on this car, which turned out to have not only the bonnet, but also the front and rear bars repainted, those panels were the most difficult for me to polish, and I also think the rest of the car with the factory paint just turned out a touch better, meaning better gloss, clarity, texture and edge-to-edge consistency of the paint's finish. As detailers, we can't control the paint we're given to work on, but given the choice, I would choose OEM paint every time.
Now the summer lies on my doorstep, and outside there's a light and it's getting bigger, and you know it. All this love, dim light, all this pain.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, my client also opted to have all the exterior glass ceramic coated. So apart from deep cleaning and decontaminating the glass earlier, it was also given a polish with an intermediate foam pad and standard car polish. This glass polishing is really all about using micro abrasives to further deep clean the glass, which can also remove any existing water etchings and some very fine micro scratches. The end result will hopefully not only be cleaner and clearer glass, but also a perfect surface for the glass coating to strongly and effectively bond to. Once all the correction work was completed, the primer polish was given time to harden and cure overnight before starting the ceramic coating protection stage. I used blown air over the entire vehicle to remove any dust and then gave both the wheels and glass an IPA wipe down prior to applying the coatings. With the wheels, I prefer to use a foam applicator. I start by evenly distributing the coating over the whole wheel face, then quickly spreading it in and finally working it in very thoroughly several times over the whole surface. Now, the specific wheel coating I'm using does flash quite quickly, So almost immediately after it's applied, you can and should start leveling it down. My process here is that I'll use a first cloth to quickly remove the majority of the excess coating, and then a second cloth to buff and level the coating to a clean and clear finish. I just love the way these wheels turned out. In fact, I think it was the first thing that the owner commented on when he saw the finished car. They just seem to have a new lease on life. Very clean, sharp, dark and glossy.
Such a waste of your beauty, girl, Lila. The key to it is you. Turn it when you feel it's true. And never look back and let your light shine without holding it in. Love yourself and don't give in. And when you feel the 1, 2, 3, 4.
With the glass coating, I tend to divide the front windscreen into 4 parts and use both straight line application strokes to firstly make sure the coating gets into every edge, and then circular strokes to help blend it in and then level out the finish. With this glass coating, if you spend a little time working it over, you can almost get it perfectly clear, so that all you need is just the very lightest final wipe with a microfiber cloth to remove some minimal high spots. I find this is the best way to ensure you get the thickest layer of the coating, as like I just mentioned, there's just very little excess to remove at the end. About an hour later, the front windscreen was given a second layer using the very same technique. With the rest of the exterior glass, only 1 layer was applied using the same method, as I do find that 1 layer on those panels will still last longer than 2 layers on the front windscreen. I did also clean the interior glass prior to coating the exterior, as it's difficult to identify exterior coating high spots on dirty interior glass, and secondly, it just detracts from the beautifully clean and coated exterior glass to have dirty and smudgy internal glass.
Is a space that creates your horizon. For your mind is a space that creates your horizon. Your mind is a space that creates your horizon. For your mind is a space that creates your horizon.
So onto the final paint coating stage. My first step when applying any ceramic coating is to always tune in the flash and wipe down timing. Wipe too soon and you get a thinner layer that won't be as durable, but wipe too late and it becomes a difficult task that can very well mar the paint or be near impossible to wipe off. Every coating is different, as is every environment, so the timing will always vary. But what we look for as detailers is firstly visual signs of how the coating is drying, becomes streaky, and even starts to create a rainbow-like effect, which tells us that the coating has bonded to the surface. And secondly, we also feel for wiping feedback, where the coating shouldn't smear too much or feel too slick and greasy, but should have just a touch of tack or resistance to it, but otherwise wipe down quite cleanly and easily. Now, I completely understand that as a first-time user, this can be a hard thing to gauge, but I guarantee you that after doing just a few cars, it is something you get a good feel for. As far as wiping or leveling down the coating excess, this is what I find works best. use your first cloth to quickly wipe within the coating section, removing about 80 to 90% of the excess, and then your second cloth to wipe well beyond the section and completely level down all the streaks and high spots, which should take a lot longer. Typically, your sections should be no more than 1 meter square. You should apply the coating in overlapping horizontal and vertical lines, and you should overlap each prior section into the new section as you progress. Is there more to it? Sure. That's why there's hundreds of videos on this channel, each one providing its own guide or information on various detailing methods and products. So let's wrap up this video. I really enjoyed this job. Part of it was finally, after so many months, getting to use the new detailing room, which, as I mentioned, still has some flooring, air lines and other bits of pieces to come, but is so much nicer than correcting and coating the paint in an all-in-one wash and detailing bay. The other thing I really enjoyed was just watching this, let's be honest, very trashed paint be transformed into something quite beautiful, and to top it all off, knowing that I was as conservative and respectful as I possibly could be in preserving the thickness and integrity of the paint. Now, I initially estimated and quoted for about 27 hours on this whole job, but leaving filming aside, ended up spending closer to 35 hours of actual detailing work. The extra hours I did all went into the paint enhancement polishing stage, which I guess turned out to be more of a paint enhancement and a half. But I was happy to put in that extra time because I felt it just needed it to be something I would stand behind as my own work. People are also always curious as to what it costs. Even after all the crazy inflation we've had, I still try to stick to $100 per hour, including all labor and materials. So 27 hours, $2,700. Very simple. But if things get any worse, I don't think that rate is going to be possible moving forward. You guys, as always, can be the judge of the results. I will say that I loved how the ceramic coating just seemed to take the paint to the next level, and can comfortably say that the owner was quite happy with his first experience going to a professional detailer. I'll also be honest in saying that I was a little apprehensive in putting out a video on a job that doesn't really demonstrate or show the best results that I can produce on a vehicle. But this is something else I've come to embrace, which is that there's no perfection in anything we produce. Perfection is only found in the Creator that brought us and everything we love and cherish into existence. So most important of all, God is good, my friends. But seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all will be added to you. May God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for watching. Stay strong, stay faithful, and I'll see you soon. How are you, mate? How's things?
Yeah, it's gotten really kind of bright and vivid now. And the wheels look amazing as well. Thank you. Oh, exhaust as well, you cleaned those? Yeah, looks lovely. I'm really happy. Nice and bright and shiny. Thank you very much. Chuffed with how it's turned out. It's lovely. Fantastic. Thank you, Sandra.
You're most welcome.
Excellent. See ya.